Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. All right, my name is Joe Zinda. I use he and him pronouns. I'm a human resource manager for the University of Michigan Library, and I'm also president-elect of the Michigan chapter of Coupa HR. It is, thank you. All right, everybody, just before we get into the main thing, we're going just some housekeeping. Please check the center of your tables for those QR codes for your session evaluation notes. All right, let's get into it. All right, it is my great pleasure to introduce our plenary speaker, Drew Daniels. Drew Daniels is a transformational speaker, trauma-informed coach, and content creator who helps organizations create irresistible work environments by promoting employee well-being. Drew served as primary speaker for Kensington Church's teaching team, which has allowed him to share messages of transformation to over 100,000 people over the last 10 years. His thought leadership around cultivating relational safety has gone viral and amassed over 95,000 social media followers, including millions of likes and views. His online success led him to form his current trauma-informed coaching practice. So everybody, please, let's give a warm welcome, a big round of applause for Drew Daniels.
Thanks so much. I think I need to have you follow me around and just hype me up everywhere you go. Oh, well, hey, I was told that I am the one that stands between you and happy hour. Is that true? Thank you. Yes. No pressure. None at all. None at all. And I imagine my felt sense as I was kind of in some of the fantastic breakouts earlier today, my sense is that you've probably inhaled a bunch of information. So I just wanted to start today with kind of opening up the room because I love the question that Lauren had asked earlier that seemed to really resonate with this particular crowd, which, by the way, I feel like this crowd is specifically very fun, probably more fun than the other chapters. Is that true? Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure I was in the right spot. Okay. But the question, she kind of asked the question, what percentage of the time are you dealing with negativity or frustration? And so for me, I want to deepen this question and kind of get a survey of the room. What are the things of frustration that you feel like you hear the most from your employees? Like, what are the sources of frustration? What do you hear people complain about the most? Who would like to go first? What are the things you hear the most about as it pertains to frustration? Yeah. Ooh, lack of accountability. Like people aren't doing their job, and so there was an accountable applause that echoed. I love that. Yeah. Who else? Yeah. Communication.
It's like the blanket umbrella that people use all of the time. But I think that really, like, I'm always talking to them about what is the root of that. And I think that it is like the breakdown. So something that's decided at a higher level, and then how does it get down to where it really needs to be, and all of the nuances.
Yeah, to repeat for the room, communication, where things are decided at the top or communicated with a small group of people, and then it trickles down, but it doesn't feel kind to some people, and so they feel frustrated, and they're in your office. Yeah, who else? What are some other sources of frustration? Oh, we're getting hands. We'll go 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Too much work and not enough people. That's good. Yeah. Did you have one?
Kind of like time it takes to get anything done.
Time it takes to get anything done. Okay, I love that. That's good. Yeah.
So lack of clarity around whether it's roles, authority, decision making.
Yeah, lack of clarity on roles, decision making. This is so good.
Oh, the process, the minutia, especially if it's not efficient or
Yeah.
it's like you're dropping something, a request into the abyss or something.
Yeah.
It's not that uncommon in higher ed. We don't want it to be, but
Yeah. You just feeling like really in the weeds of the details, and it feels like you're spending your time talking about things that maybe don't matter in maybe our view. Is that kind of it? That's good. Yeah. Yeah, red tape. Ooh, we love red tape. Yeah.
I get a lot of employees who apply for jobs and they don't get selected.
Yeah.
They feel frustrated. They think it's personal, or they
Yeah.
because they had something in their file. And I'm like, trust me, they're not looking through your file. You can't always tell them, well, this is why. If you change this, did that, and so then you have to encourage them to seek outside resources that might help with their resume or some interviewing tips. But
Yeah.
then they think it's personal and they sort of quietly quit.
Yeah, the feeling of it's personal, not getting a job, a lot of frustration. Yeah, I love these. These are great. Maybe one more. Does someone have one more to share? Yeah, in the back. Cost of living, pay, keeping up with it. Yeah, I feel like the sense is like, I think it's very obvious that turnover is an issue. Retaining talent is very hard. There's so many options for people to only want to work remote or to be untethered from the 9 to 5, opt in for the gig economy. I think keeping people is harder than it's ever been. But I think when it comes to frustration, this is something that's a very human issue that we don't really know how to address in a professional setting. And so today, my title of my presentation is To Fight for Their Future, How to Prevent Frustration, Burnout, and Turnover. Now, this is something that is not going to wow you like how AI is going to create another strategy to retain employees. This presentation is actually just going to remind you of something you've probably already known deep down, which is that people want to be known and needed, is that people want to feel valued and seen and to contribute to something that's bigger than themselves and a vision that they are compelled to love. And so I don't know if you knew this or not, but you as an HR leader are like a zebra. Now follow me here. You're like a zebra because zebras, they operate in packs. And some people might say, and we have to trust some people because I'm not a zoologist, but some people say that zebras like to know where the lion is. They want to know where the danger is, and they don't want to get too close to the lion because they don't want to get surprised and devoured by it, but they also don't want to not know where it is. They like to keep a safe distance and a watchful eye to always know where the threat is. Can you find yourself, HR leaders, in this role? You are the zebra. You are always threat forecasting. You are always standing as the bridge between the best interest of your campus, your organization, higher ed, and your employees. You are the zebra that is in the pack watching and making sure that the lion doesn't devour the pack. But what I can imagine for many of us in this room is that we get so preoccupied with all the threat forecasting, trying to dream up the 1,000th training of how our employees cannot get us into legal trouble, that we actually unintentionally neglect the rest of the pack because we're so busy keeping our eye on the lion. And so today I want to offer a strategy of how to prevent frustration that helps the pack not just survive, but helps the pack thrive. And so some learning objectives that you're going to get today. Number one, you're going to get a scientifically based 6-step framework that helps to safely resolve tension with any peer, leader, or employee. Then we're going to learn how to have hard conversations that will ensure that your coworkers feel seen, heard, and valued. And finally, how to cultivate psychologically safe relationships that allow you to confront sources of burnout and frustration collaboratively. Now, I love to give a You Are Here map. You know how you go to the mall and it's a You Are Here and it gives context to everything? And kind of probably just like every wonderful speaker that we've had today, I'll give you just a little bit of statistical salad that could feel a lot, that could feel like a bunch of random stats trying to prove a point. But for me, I think a lot of these stats actually point to a very important learning, because if I'm honest with you, I think there's a lot of very corporate ways that we try to describe things that actually might be a lot simpler than we're making it out to be. And so let's start. What is the impact of burnout and frustration? Well, 95% of you say that it's sabotaging workforce retention. I don't think this is a surprise. But if we said, what about the workers themselves, like the employees? If you ask any employee, there's some studies that were done, of in-person workers, 7 out of 10 would say that they're feeling and experiencing burnout in their current position. And then remotely, 86% of remote workers are experiencing burnout on some level. They reported that it was maybe they felt more isolated, they lacked boundaries, they're too busy doing their laundry. I don't know what it is, but for them, there's a sense where the burnout is a little more contagious. And then if you were to ask any old employee what their opinion is, they'd say 9 out of 10 people would say that this unmanaged stress and frustration is negatively impacting the quality of the work. So again, I don't think anyone is surprised that frustration and burnout's an issue, but I think maybe we're curious about what the cause is. Well, what is the cause? And you know what? You could find whatever you want to find be the cause of burnout and make it be your banner that you wave to your leader, to your organization, whoever it is. But I look to Gallup because I think there is some common themes that we can notice and some that have been shared. The first, they gave 5 main causes of burnout, the first of which was unreasonable deadlines given by leaders to their team members. And then the second one is unfair treatment in the workplace from leaders to team members with bias. Unfair pay was what they were alluding to in the study. Or unmanageable or unrealistic workload given by the leaders to the team members, and then the lack of clarity regarding job expectations from the leaders to the team members, and then poor communication and support from the management team. And so I think we can kind of draw a conclusion that I think there's a tension that exists between leaders and team members as one of the great causes of burnout. In fact, if you were to look deeper into this, it says that 75% of all Americans would say that the most stressful aspect of their job is their immediate boss. And then if we were to look deeper into this and say, hey, what does a satisfying work relationship even look like to you? 86% of people would say it includes a healthy manager, and only 14% would say it comes from their colleagues. So it's not about, bulldozing a wall and putting in bigger windows that's going to create more peace at work. It's going to come from the tension that exists between leaders and team members. Now, if you're kind of like me, there's going to be like a temptation, I think, for all of us to feel that sense of like agreement of like, yeah, like I don't understand why so many leaders get the position that they do. I don't know why, who's putting these people in these management positions, right? We've all maybe had a bad boss or two or three or four or five, and all of us are feeling this. But I actually kind of want to ask a different question. If 75% of Americans, any American you ask, say that their boss is the thing that's stressing them out, right? If 75% of bosses are stressing their employees, are we just all that bad at choosing who we elevate? I mean, is this a common thing that all of us are so poor at elevating leaders, or is there a more simple explanation? Or is just relating to humans and problem-solving relationships one of the hardest things that we'll ever do? See, I don't know about you, but I don't think any of us have to look further than the relationship to our spouses, our partners, our children, our own parents and friends to know that collaborating, even in authority structures of parents, right? That collaborating and problem solving with interpersonal relationships is one of the hardest things that we will do. And so for me, I'm making this simple. I think there's a lot of corporate ways to describe a really honest truth, which is the cause of burnout and frustration is simply how people relate to other people. In fact, I think a better way to say it is that frustration has a face. It's not always a what, but it's a who. And I think many of us have stories from our career that points to a person being the source of our frustration. Now for me, I worked in this organization called Kensington, and we host large events, and so I was a speaker once a month there, and for about 10 years. And I had a great relationship with our executive director there, and he was one of these rare leaders who was very intentional, warm, compassionate, kind, relational. And he put a surprise meeting on my calendar, and I had an immediate bad feeling in my gut that this wasn't going to go well. And it was at a lunch, and so I go to the lunch in the restaurant, and for the first 45 minutes, we're shooting the breeze. We're not really getting anywhere, and I still have this feeling of dread in my stomach that something's about to come up. And he goes, hey, Drew, I watched your most recent speaking performance, and I wanted to give you some feedback. And I said, all right. He goes, if I'm honest with you, I felt like you weren't clear enough. You had too many directions. You were pulling people in. And if I'm honest, I didn't really love where you placed the promotional aspect. We have this promotional aspect and have to have people, buy into it. I didn't like where you placed it. And then he goes, you know what? And then also you said some casual things that personally I don't think I liked or even agreed with. And to cap it all off, I guess someone who was in the crowd had sent him a personal email saying that I had used some science that might be a little bit outdated or old because it was from 2000. And I heard all this, and of course, I had to hold my tongue because there was only 1 minute left in the meeting as he constantly checked his watch to head out to his next meeting. And he asked, do you want to say anything? And I said, you know what, I'm going to think about it. And as we stand up to leave, he says, I want you to promise me one thing. And I said, sure. He goes, I want you to promise me that you're not going to take any of this home with you. You're going to leave all of this right here. You're not going to carry it around with you. Just leave it here. And at this point, for me, I was so frustrated. I was feeling so unseen, unheard, because what he didn't know is that very presentation I had stayed up till 4 a.m. working on, warring over the exact issues that he had brought up in our feedback meeting. I hated where I had to put that promotional thing, but I felt trapped. There was nowhere else to put it. I actually double-checked the science. It was very reliable. Even current researchers are using it today. And then all my content, I knew it felt a little unclear and I was pulling people in different directions. But I knew, I stayed up so late because I had to make that decision, and I was ready to defend it. But of course, we kind of moved on from the meeting, and then a month goes by. And in this month, I'm doing what most of us do, rehearsing petty revenge. I was rehearsing my petty revenge because I was ready to quit. I was ready to be done. I'd given 9 loyal, serving joyfully years at an organization that I'd worked very hard to, staying up till 4 in the morning, working on things that are important. And for me to feel so disregarded by someone who I loved and trusted in a 1-hour meeting, I was practicing like quitting my job and then looking at him in the face and literally going, now I want you to make a promise to me. You're just going to leave this here. But a month goes by, and I liked to do some extra speaking because I'd get some extra pay for it. And out of nowhere, I get a notice in my own bank account that says that my rate has been cut, and no one has told me. And it was the responsibility of this particular leader. And I'm so over the top at this point. I send a long, vulnerable email saying I'd love to continue to serve joyfully, doing some extra work, but I want to feel honored. I never heard communication. And then I never heard anything for another 2 to 3 weeks. No jokes. So at this point, I'm feeling really frustrated, really emotional. And finally, word kind of gets back to this leader, and he gives me a phone call, and he goes, hey, we fixed the pay, and I am so sorry. And he continues, he goes, I want to apologize because if I'm being completely honest with you, I've actually been really experiencing some depression in my life right now. He's like, I'm so stressed by the workload of this job. All I do at night is look at the clock because I'm justifying that I can just go to bed, that I don't have to be up anymore. And I'm so sorry that you kind of were impacted by this. And within a 5 to 10 minute conversation of smoothing things over, I went from a person who was ready to jump off a proverbial ledge to someone who continued to serve joyfully. And isn't that kind of crazy? That one meeting could make me want to end my job, and then another meeting could actually make me want to stay on. See, I think this is the benefit of corporate America, is that our feelings kind of don't always belong up front. And with that benefit, we can kind of smooth things over in a little more productive or effective way. But this also has a downside. Because if we're honest, we take 2 people to work with us every single day, and you know who these 2 people are. You know who they are. Ready? The first person you take with you is the LinkedIn you. This is the professional, curated, intelligent, peppy, excited to be a team player version of you, that's not afraid of feedback or getting pushed back or having to circle back and put it in Slack, This is the part of you that is presentable. But then there's the locked up you. This is the offendable part of you that calculates petty revenge. The part of you that doesn't mind a little bit of office gossip from time to time. This is, some of y'all thought that was too funny. But the locked up part of us is also extremely real. And I think what a lot of leaders are recognizing is that they can no longer afford to neglect developing the relationships with the locked up parts of people. So what the cause of burnout and frustration is that we don't have relationships with this part of people. The ones that are frustrated, the ones that have emotions, the ones that can't help but feel threatened by the way things are happening. And so I want to actually present this framework that I believe could be an effective tool in any meeting, in any relationship, including at home with your children, partner, parents, whoever. But I want to introduce that framework, but I don't think it's going to make total sense until I show you why it is a very effective approach. And to do this, I do have a little discussion question that I'm curious to survey the room. What was a little regret that you personally had this week? What was a little tiny regret? Maybe you didn't spend enough time with your kids, or you were late, or you didn't grind it out in the 5 a.m. club as you're supposed to, or what was the little regret that maybe you had this week? Let's see. Oh, it's kind of like you're gonna expose yourself a little bit. It's a safe space. It's a safe space. Yeah, please. He made some good banana bread, but he didn't finish it. Thank you. Okay, what's another little regret? I love this. Yeah, okay.
A family member gave me a big bag of homemade vegetables that I'm going to give away to someone else because I don't eat it.
I love this. Okay, and so can I ask why Why that's a regret? Do you feel just unkind, like rejecting their?
I said yes to not hurt their feelings and get out of there.
So okay.
Sweet, I should have just been like,
Yeah, okay, but can I ask you, so what were you hoping for by accepting it? Like, what were you hoping that was going to bring you inside?
to make them feel good about giving me something because I came over and helped them do something.
Yeah, and by making them feel good, how would that make you feel internally? That would make you feel good. What type of emotions or internal state would that give you? Like satisfaction, joy, like how would you describe that? Like
A sense of peace.
a sense of peace, okay.
And we ended on a good note, and I can't wait to see the person again.
Yeah. Peace, knowing that there's safety in this relationship, essentially. I love that. Yeah, who else? Maybe one more. What was a little regret that you had this week? Yes.
I skipped going to a family reunion.
Oh. I mean, is that a regret, though? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So can I ask about that regret? So what were you hoping that choice made you?
Save time,
To save some time.
because I'm not that close with the family. If I put in the time, I'd resent it.
Yes. Okay.
And so it's like, do I choose resentment for going or guilt for not going?
And
I chose guilt.
we chose guilt, baby. We love that. So I love it because you answered my sequence of questions. I was like, what was that going to hope to bring you inside? Well, I would prefer guilt over resentment and bitterness. And so by having the experience of guilt, that felt preferable to resentment. Can I dive deeper into that just a little bit? Okay, let's go. This is a little bit of therapy right now. Okay, so when we think about this guilt, what did you hope that guilt would bring you in comparison to that resentment? Like, what were you hoping to experience inside that would be positive?
All right, hope's
Sorry.
the wrong word. So if I would feel resentful, there's a chance I come across jerky to family
Yeah.
members, or I take out that lingering resentment against, say, my spouse or
Yes.
family.
Okay.
Whereas like the guilt, I may or may not get any heat for it, and that might all be internal, and I guess I'd rather feel bad internally
Yes.
than lash out at other people.
Okay, I love that. That was the ingredient we needed. The ingredient of like, I don't want to ruin and destroy these relationships. I'm looking to have a type of belonging. And so I have more peace internally, even though I'm carrying guilt. That choice was going to result in more peace than the choice of, okay, I love this. The reason why I'm pressing so hard into all of this, because I wanted to make a point. Did you realize that every choice that you make is searching for something? Every choice that you make is searching for one of these three things: that you believe that thing will bring you love, safety, or belonging. By arriving at a place of internal peace, that makes me feel safe inside. By choosing this, I feel like I'm going to have the result of love internally that I'm looking for. It doesn't matter how generous, kind, altruistic a choice we make is, we're looking for one of these three things. And the opposite is true too. It doesn't matter how hurtful, harmful, or hateful a choice we make is. We believe with everything in us that that is going to produce the result of love, safety, and belonging more efficiently. Think about it this way. Based on everything you've ever learned in your life, based on every experience you've ever had, based on all the education you've ever inhaled at conferences, based on every relationship you've been embedded in, based on every traumatizing moment inside of those relationships you've ever had, even if you made a harmful choice to hurt someone else, somewhere inside of you believed that that was the most logical choice that was going to get you to the result of love, safety, or belonging the fastest. And so really what we're describing is the basic premise of holistic psychology, right? That humans, and I love that Lauren said this, the goal of the human brain was never to be happy. The goal of the human brain was simply to survive. And if the goal was to survive, there's really only two internal states everything we experience can fall into. The first one is what we mentioned, safety. Everything we do is because we're trying to stay alive and to feel safe. Even love. Love evolved out of the need to bond to precious, irreplaceable others. because we believed by bonding to irreplaceable others that we'd be more likely to survive the elements than if we were alone. Likewise, belonging evolved because it was more likely that you would survive in a tribe or a pack than it would if you survived the elements alone. And so what we could say is that safety is the common ancestor of all of our behaviors. It is, everything can be traced back to believing that what we're doing is going to keep us safe. And because safety is this pursuit, it's so advantageous for us to be highly sensitive and attuned to threat. That threat is the thing that motivates us into action to become safe, right? So think of it this way. We all hate stress in our work, but stress is a servant. Stress signals to us that there's something in my work that's going to cause disruption or make me not feel safe inside of the contract agreement of this job. And so I have to eliminate that threat. And this stress is signaling to me that I still don't have safety. What we could say is that every second of our lives is an obedience to the forces of threat and safety. Now, I kind of did mention something about work, right? And you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I hear what you're saying. We're zebras, but it's not like there's real lions out there. Like, I don't understand how this applies to leadership. I don't understand how this applies to the work that I'm doing. Well, here's the thing. Work, as we just said, is the first world contract that guarantees our safety. We don't have to all farm and pick our corn and build our houses, but instead we offer our talents, our value, and our skill set in exchange for resources that help us survive. So whether you are a CEO, middle-level manager, entry-level employee, HR leader, facilities worker at any place, all of us are operating with the same hardware and software of just wanting to find safety. And if this is true, what if we could access this in the people that we work with? What if we had a strategy that could get us there? Because the truth is that people are only going to be as successful as they are safe. In fact, I mean, there's studies done on this. Harvard Business Review says that there is reduction in turnover. There's far more engagement. There's more productivity. There's less stress. There's more general life satisfaction, and people are more likely to work together. Why? Because when we constantly feel stress, even though it is a servant, when we're perpetually in stress, it's like we're the zebra who's always looking at the lion. You believe that you're threatened. You believe your life is in jeopardy. So when your boss calls you into the office and you get a surprise phone call or a meeting put on your calendar, we're afraid we won't be safe. We won't have resources. Our future's in jeopardy. Our performance matters because we need to stay safe inside. And so when we know internally in our bones, in our tissues that we are safe, we are free to relax and to perform at our best level. I mean, think of it this way. If you live your life in constant, perpetual stress, your body is going to produce stress hormones and chemicals that are going to wash over every muscle, organ, and cell of your body, telling your body and your brain that there's imminent danger always happening. And so when we're living in perpetual stress, you believe there's a predator, and that predator is your boss. And so without further ado, what is the framework? What is the framework? It is cleverly acronymed LISTEN, to listen. And the first one is that because we are all people who respond to safety and threat, is that we need to start with ourselves and to learn and identify our own versions of threats. I love this example. Michael Singer, he's an author. He gives this example of how many times we avoid dealing with the threats in our lives. And I'm going to use his example, but I'll put my own language to it. I want you to imagine you arrive at a trailhead and you're about to take a hike. And as you get down into the woods a little bit, the brush is thick, and it's so thick to the point where a thorn lodges in one of your shoulders, and it sends excruciating pain all throughout your body. And you can't even touch it. You can't have anything graze upon it without it sending electric shock throughout your whole body. You have a choice to make. This choice is either you can take it out and face overwhelming pain that could even make you faint, or you can leave it in and deal with it later. So let's say you choose to leave it in. Well, you keep going on your hike, you pull out your pocket machete that you have, and you go, well, nothing can touch my thorn, so I gotta cut all these branches. I don't want these sticks to be flicking at my thorn, so you have to cut everything down, and it takes you an extra 2 hours, but you think to yourself, finally, you know what? At least it didn't touch my thorn. But then you're exhausted, so you go home, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to sleep this thing off, and then you think to yourself, wait, I don't know if I can sleep in my bed because I might roll over and touch my thorn, and so you kind of have to build a little makeshift bed or an apparatus of some sorts that kind of suspends the part of your shoulder in midair to, just work with me, that suspends your shoulder, and you go, you know what, I'm not going to get as good of a sleep, but you know what, at least it's not touching my thorn. And then you wake up and you have to go to the office, and then you're like, I can't go to the office because Jim's going to be there, and Jim just loves to pat me on the shoulder as hard as he can. I can't see Jim, and honestly, I don't think I want people asking about it if I'm protecting it. I might do some more remote work or move my office somewhere else. It's going to be a little more lonely, and we're already pretty isolated, but at least no one's touching my thorn. And then it's Thursday night, and after cocktail hour, you have pickleball. And at pickleball, you have to put this padding system over this thorn to make sure, that nothing's going to touch it. You're not as agile. You can't hit the ball. But after you're done, you just breathe a sigh of relief and you go, ah, finally, I've made a life that's free of my thorn. When the reality is that you've had to construct an entire life around your thorn. You've designed an entire life in dutiful service to protecting something that's wounding you. And I think what begins to happen is we can even begin to train other people how not to touch our thorn. Whoa, 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 you can't say that here. Well, hey, if you don't like my leadership style, you can just get out. I'm confident that there's probably some people here who you're not even working for a boss, you're working for their thorn. And so if we're going to learn where the thorn is, the threats are the things that lead to our thorns. So the threats are the things that we're protecting. We're like, whoa, whoa, that threatens a part of me. The thorn is a message that we've believed about ourselves. So here's a question that you can ask yourself that might help you identify what your threats are. What makes you react most? What's the thing that when people sit in your office, it makes you the most frustrated? What's the thing that makes you go home and stay up thinking about and dramatizing and rehearsing in your mind? What is the thing that sends you into a place of fear or panic? What's the thing that makes you filled with contempt and rage? The things that make us react the most are communicating to us that there's a threat inside of us that we don't want to have to touch. There's a thorn or wound. Maybe if that person is disagreeing with our proposal or our way of viewing things, maybe that threatens a message in us that I'm not capable. Or maybe if they don't like our leadership, it says I'm not lovable or I'm not worthy. And these are the true thorns. And here's the thing, we need to remove the thorns. And so what do we do when we begin to identify everything that's threatening us, all these reactions that we're having? Ask, well, where did that come from? Because when you keep asking why do I feel so contemptuous towards that person? Why do I have so much rage towards my manager? Why do I have so much rage towards that other HR employee? Why? Where does that come from? And eventually you'll pull the thread and find yourself at a message that threatens your lovability, your safety, and your belonging. And so now that you have begun to maybe do some of this work, the next step is to actually remove the thorn. Now, I did say that this talk, sorry, I have to go get a prop really fast. I did say that, I didn't mention this, but this talk isn't as direct as it might seem. In fact, I think it's actually a little bit more of a lifestyle. But I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that this balloon right here that is not blown up represents your physical body, and it's the color green because it's God's favorite color because of Michigan State University. Go green? Okay, we're in good company. 2013 grad right here. Okay, anyways, had to get that out of the way, yeah. Because the second thing that you're going to want to do after you identify your threats is to invite all of the emotions. Now, to illustrate this, again, imagine that this balloon is your physical body, and emotional energy is going to represent the air. all of us have bodies, and we are all kind of containers for energy, right? Oh, right? And so what happens is, every time we feel something, an emotion or a threat, we become occupied with more energy. So maybe, someone in your workplace calls a meeting on a Saturday. You're feeling frustrated about it. You show up to the meeting, and you realize that meeting could have just been an email. And then, when you get home from that meeting, you get an email from someone who you work with, pushing back, and then they copy your boss in it, and they sign the signature kindly. And I think what all of us do, which is normal and common, what all of us do, we pretend like we're not filled. We pretend like this doesn't bother us. This is the locked up part. We hide it. But here's the thing. Energy needs to flow through us. The emotions need to be discharged. This is how our nervous system works. But what begins to happen is if we hold on to it too much, and we carry this around with us on Monday, when someone comes into our office and is complaining about communication because things aren't clear enough, you go, well, you know what? And you react. And then you go, oh my gosh. And you feel shame. And then that shame fills up your balloon. And then you carry it around even more. And then someone does something else that makes you mad, and you react again. But then when you react, you're like mad. You're like, why am I so reactive? Other people aren't as stressed as me. Shaming yourself. What does it mean to invite all of our emotions? It means to invite all of them and experience them. So if you feel rage, you feel anger, and you need to experience and sit with the emotion of anger. You need to sit with and experience the emotion of shame and sadness. And when you do, you deflate. This is something called integration. It's where we invite every part of us. Because for the most part, we've been hiding a part of us, but now we have the whole picture of who we really are. And when we integrate, we deflate. When we invite everything to the table, we find ourselves more cleansed. And so now that we've done some of our own internal work, we've created our own map of some of the threats and some of the unwanted emotions that we don't want to feel, and we've given ourselves permission, now we're no longer constantly looking at the lion. We can actually begin to focus on the pack. That's right. This is the exciting part. Because now you freed yourself to be available to coworkers, colleagues, your employees, that you get to be a source of irresistible leadership because you are emptied of a lot of threats. And so S, you get to study their threats. Study their threats. Now, I wear glasses. Does anyone else wear glasses or contacts of some level in here for a second? I want you to imagine just for a moment. I walked up to somebody who had 20/20 vision. Who has 20/20 vision here? Just out of curiosity. You do? Okay. If I were to give you my glasses, what if I said, hey, can you read what's on the screens? She'd be like, well, probably not. But then what if I looked at her and I said, hey, why can't you see what's on the screen? I mean, I can see what's on the screen. I mean, those things make me see perfectly fine. I don't know what your problem is. How come you can't see what's on the screen? I mean, these things help us see. Now, if I actually did that, that is exactly what it is like when we don't understand that everyone else has their own version of threats. We have our own threats, and that's our prescription. We understand them. We know why it makes us mad when there's no communication. We know why it's mad when people disrespect us because of our story. And sometimes people come into our offices and they're frustrated and they're complaining, and it's kind of like giving them our glasses being like, I don't understand why this is such a big deal. What happens is that we assume that everyone else has our prescription. I love Mark Wallin. He has a book called It Didn't Start With You. And he uses this example of an optometrist. And he says, when you go to the optometrist, they try to get crystal clear on what your prescription is. So they go 1 or 2, 1 or 2, 2 or 3, 2 or 3. And then all of us are like, I can't tell the difference. Which one is it? 3 or 4, 3 or 4 or 5. And they do this because they want to get so much accuracy to know that they're giving you full 20/20 clarity and sight. In fact, the last time I went to my eye doctor, she goes, hey, can you actually put your hand on the knob and begin to twist it to the exact precision of where you can start to see clearly? And I said, why? She goes, well, a lot of times when I try to do it, I'm not inside their brains and I can't see what they see, so I need their help too. This is what it means to study someone else's threats. We can't see through their lens. We need them to attune and accurately get precise on exactly what it is that's bothering them and how it threatens them in precise language. Because if we don't, when we ignore someone's threats and just say, that's your problem, that's when judgment happens. Judgment happens when we choose not to understand someone's threats. And so how does this look in leadership? This means by becoming someone who's genuinely curious, and not the professional curious, not the I'm going to be good at my job, so I'm going to get to know you. It's actually like a genuine curiosity of like, hold on, there's something that really matters to you here. And so you say, well, hold on, what's at stake for you in this? Can I ask that? Or tell me more about that. Whoa, hold on. When they said that to you, what was that like for you? Can you tell me about that? Or wait, hold on. Let me get this straight. Were you saying that you were kind of bothered, afraid, or were you just feeling like confused? And the more that we do this, we untether ourselves from all the assumptions that we're making about people, which really just might be our own projection of ourselves onto them. And so in the process, we begin to do this. And so after we've studied their threats, I still don't think that we've quite hit the nail on the head. So the next thing I love this, is like the thing I've started to do all the time in my life, is to tell them what you hear. And when we tell them what we hear, we're using a combination of their language, but also our language. Now, this can get kind of confusing because a lot of times when we're communicating, it doesn't always mean that they're understanding. I'll say it this way. Communication is not information sent, it's information that is received. I can communicate to you that Michigan State is the best college out there, but you may not receive and internalize that as the truth, right? And so communication is not what I say, it's how it is being received and internalized and organized by the listener. And so I actually did also get permission from my wife to tell this story because we got married in 2016. We've been married for 8 years, and we have 2 little ones, a 4-year-old boy, Bronson, and a 1-year-old little girl, Ivory. But in the beginning of our marriage, we can laugh at this now, but my wife could not say the words, I'm sorry. She could not say them. She couldn't muster them up. And for like 4 or 5 years, we had this repeated fight. Why can't you just say sorry? I just couldn't do it. And we got into this version of a fight where basically I said, why can't you say sorry? And she would say, because you're going to get mad, right? And so the communication that she would send is, hey, if I say sorry, it would make you mad and leave. And so as one day we were having this fight, as you do in marriage over and over again, the same ones forever. But as we were having this eternal struggle, we had this, and she's like, no, like if I say sorry, you're going to get mad at me and leave. And how am I hearing that? I'm hearing that as, oh, so you think I'm the person who's going to be so reactive and it's going to validate everything you've ever done. And now Drew's the hothead who's going to blow up? And so I responded to her and I said, well, babe, you're going to get mad at me for being hurt? You're the one who can't say sorry. And she kind of looked at me puzzled on this one occasion. And when she looked at me puzzled, I kind of looked back at her. I'm like, wait, I don't think I'm getting this right. And she goes, I don't think I'm getting this right either. I was like, okay, hold on. Repeat it. Tell me what you heard. She goes, no. She says, no, if I say sorry, I feel like, if I'm being honest, it's going to make you feel like you're allowed to be mad at me. And I can't have that. And I was like, wait, what? I said, let me repeat this back to you. Let me tell you what I heard. I said, so if you say sorry, it would validate that you feel unworthy of love and that I'm just allowed to be mad at you and leave you? Like, by you saying sorry, you're in agreement that I can just stop loving you? And she goes, yes. And I looked, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. She goes, I'm so sorry too. She goes, yeah, it's like I feel like I'm giving you the last bit of my power that I have in this relationship. And from that moment, it diffused the fight, and we pretty much have never had the fight again because we needed to tell each other that what was being sent was being received as well. I love this. There's a therapist named Dan Weil who actually coined this term, doubling, where sometimes when people are talking, we can't just repeat the words back to them. We have to repeat what they're saying in more emotional terms. Because guess what? Whether we like it or not, the locked up part of us, emotions, is its native language. And so when we speak to the heart, we can disarm the person. And so we repeat things in an emotional, softer way. And so how do you know that you've achieved the goal of making sure, you've studied their threats and they've told you what they've heard? Here's the question. Do they have to keep explaining themselves, right? Do they keep explaining, or do they still seem frustrated? Does it feel like there's something missing? Because if there's something missing, it might mean that not everything is there. Now, here's an application that you can do this with, and you can take this home, use it with your family. You can use it in the workplace. You can invoice me later. I promise it's a really good one. But this is actually not even mine, so I can't even charge you to give it to you. But here's what I want you to do. If you feel like you're in a conflict, maybe it's a coworker or a boss or someone who works for you, and you feel like you're just on the hamster wheel, here's what I want you to do. One of you is going to be the speaking party. The other person is going to be the listening party. And the speaking party is promised that they will not be interrupted and they will not be shown any defensiveness to. They get the entire floor to explain whatever they want to its fullness. And then the listening party, they have to respond and repeat back what they heard until the speaking party is satisfied. And then you switch. So one person goes, the other repeats it back until they're satisfied, and then you switch. What you'll find out is a lot of times it's not even about the words or the information getting correct, it's about getting the emotional information correct, because that's the native language of the locked up parts of us. And so then, after all this is said and done, part E, you get to give one of the most precious resources in the world. Because I don't believe this resource is abundant at all in our world today. I believe that this is something that is rare. It's rare to even find sometimes inside of our own families, but it's to exercise empathy. Now, when we hear about empathy in the workplace, I think there's a misconception that empathy is something that enables people to continue their poor behavior, right? The more I show empathy and compassion and kindness, the more likely they are to still pout or to complain or not work as hard because I'm just giving them an emotional out. But here's the reality. We're not even describing empathy when we describe that. We're describing accountability. Those are two different things. Empathy is being able to resonate with what someone else is feeling. We talked about the trailhead. And that trailhead, the first time you navigate some emotions that you don't like and you're cutting down branches, eventually the more you do that, that emotion becomes like a highway. That trail becomes like a highway where you can easily access your own internal state and then access empathy as well. You're able then to understand what someone else is feeling because you have gone there within yourself and you're able to show up and exercise empathy. And there's one actually child scientist who talks a lot about this phenomenon called the mirror neurons. Mirror neurons is these things that fire off in our brain that help us literally feel the internal state of someone else. And his name's Dan Siegel. Well, I'm skipping ahead. Oh, we're also really, here we go. He says this. He says, empathy can be seen as metaphorically putting ourselves in the other person's mental shoes. We may learn to understand others' internal states by the states our mirror neuron systems create inside of us. And that emotional understanding of others is directly linked to our awareness and understanding of ourselves. That's why it's so important to know the map that is called you. And I think what really happens with empathy, and we saw this a little bit, is it's kind of like a finger trap. Did anyone kind of play with these as kids and stuff, or maybe your kids haven't? A finger trap is interesting because the trick is you have to move close. And I think when people show up into our office and we don't want to relate with them. They come in, they're frustrated, they're hot-headed, or whatever it might be. The last thing we want to do is have to engage with it or solve their problems or reward it maybe. And so we want to pull out, but the reality is that when we actually move towards them, not only do they get freed, but we also get freed from the bondage of that toxic relationship pattern that could emerge. And so how can we have empathy? Empathy is not about even equating your pain to theirs. It's simply about relating your pain to theirs. Because not all of us maybe have experienced someone else's life. Maybe you've lost a parent, you've lost a loved one in your life, you've had some tragedy or trauma going on in your personal life that's now showing up at work. Well, for you, I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, you know, my hamster died, and let me tell you, well, no, it'll never be the same. And so it's not about trying to equate that our situations are the same. It's actually just about relating to the feeling that's underpinning all of it. Because we don't all know tragedy, but we know the feeling of sadness. We don't all know trauma, but we know the feeling of fear and panic. And that's the thing that we all can relate to. And so finally, to close it off, at the end of the day, we need to solve problems. We do need to serve the bottom line. We do need to look out for the lion. And in all of this, the bottom line requires that there's going to be winners and losers on our team and with our employees. And so how do we manage this? It's by negotiating solutions with them. In fact, I love the term that some people called gridlock, where two people both can't win. Maybe you've had a situation at work where you're trying to win and someone else is trying to win, but it's clear that neither of you will 100% win. In fact, they actually showed that when it comes to gridlock, there is a way where you can experience it the most optimally and successfully. What does that mean? That there is a way to manage the feeling of tension that is most optimal. And they did this by studying interpersonal relationships. And when they studied interpersonal relationships, and specifically this was marriages, they found that roughly 70% of all interpersonal conflict is repeating. It will just keep going, right? Like, for example, the problem of, hey, what am I going to wear to the wedding this weekend? That's a solvable problem. But the problem of, how come you're always late? How come you're always late? That might be a reoccurring fight, and it might feel unsolvable. Or why aren't you more like this? Or maybe even an employee. Why can't you develop your skills? Develop your skills. And they just won't. It's an unsolvable problem that feels like it's reoccurring. And 70% of things keep going, keep going. And so they wanted to find what happens when there's some unsolvable tension that's happening. And they found two particular traits that people who measured with high quality relationships, people with the best marriages, people with the best intimate connections, they found that these people, these pairs, did two things. Number one, this is anticlimactic, they compromised 50-50. They realized two people can't win 100% and that they had to find mutual ground. And the second thing is that they sensitively attuned to what was lost in the compromise for the other person. So maybe someone comes into your office and they want a raise, they want more pay, and they're with their manager. You know you can't give it to them, but you also want to keep them around, so you have to kind of find the middle, but it hurts your budget, or however that works in your world. That's not my expertise. But for you, what this looks like is saying, hey, like, I really know that you wanted that salary raise. What were you hoping that was going to bring you inside? What were you hoping that was going to bring you? And maybe it's family, maybe it's security, maybe they were going to feel valued, maybe they were going to finally feel seen. But when we sensitively attune to what's lost in other people, after listening, learning their threats, studying what's going on for them, and being a compassionate, empathetic leader, you build trust in a way that is so extraordinarily rare that 75% of people are saying that, man, the people they work with are stressing them out. And so if you choose to employ this strategy, you will be an irresistible leader that people love to follow, that your managers, your supervisors will love to interface with, because you're someone who understands that what they're looking for is safety. And you know how to provide safety because you've gone ahead of them and done the work in a world where people don't want to see the locked up parts. And so, thank you so much. I hope we can connect. If you did have any questions, feel free to email me. I'd love to connect with you. And I really hope that happy hour is as relieving and as fun as it can be. So thanks so much for having me. I hope you enjoyed it.